The answer, 106.5 million people in the United States, 5.2% unemployment, life expectancy, 53.5 male, 54.5 female, illiteracy rate down to a new low of 6% of the population, and the average annual earnings, $1,236. The question, what is the year 1920? World War I is over. The U.S. military shrank from 1.2 million the year before down to only 353,000. The Roaring Twenties were about to begin, and on May 10th, Mary Elizabeth Martin was born to Jacob Beatham Martin and Minnie Mae Smith on a farm between Orrstown and Shippensburg, PA. She was the middle child between Paul and Luella, born 10 and 7 years earlier, and Martha, 13 months later, and David almost 8 years behind her. Jacob only farmed for 3 years, and when Mary was only 6 months old, they moved off the farm and her father started a tin shop and roofing business, a trade he had learned years earlier working at a hardware store in Shippensburg. A stream ran through their new property, and it was a great place to play, swim, and catch minnows, using them to fish with her dad at a nearby spring. She remembers their house having electricity early on, and because of the tin and sheet metal shop, their house also was one of a few that had a furnace.
I can faintly remember. I don't remember of kerosene lamps, but I can faintly remember a big, what did they call those lamps that they had above the kitchen table? It was a big thing with some kind of oil in. It wasn't kerosene like a kerosene lamp. But I can remember when they put electricity in, because I remember Daddy soliciting to get that. He wanted electricity so bad down in the shop, and he solicited, and I remember him telling some stories when he got home. Some people wanted it and some didn't. And he thought it was just so contrary of people that didn't want electricity. And my brother held me up and told me to stick my finger in that hole. And it just shocked me so bad until this day. I just can't stand to be shocked. My mother had a heart condition. And of course, Daddy right away wanted to have her sewing machine fixed electrically. And I don't know what the procedure they had to do to take an old sewing machine and make it electric. But I remember people thought, well, now they must be rich. She's got an electric sewing machine.
She remembers her mother as a hard worker, getting up early to do house chores, gardening, cooking, and then taking care of customers and salesmen at the shop during the day. Mary doesn't remember either grandfather as they died young. They visited her grandmother Smith, who lived in Highfield, Maryland, every couple months, but made a weekly tradition of visiting grandmother Martin in Shippensburg.
We had a system. My daddy closed the shop always at Saturday dinner time. The tin shop was closed. We got ready for Sunday then. But by then we were bathed and dressed. Then we went to Shippensburg to my grandmother's. We'd get the groceries, and I can remember Mother would have eggs to take along. We had chickens, and she'd have a basket of eggs, and she'd get her groceries. And many a time I saw her and Daddy give Mother $5, and we'd go up to the store, and she bought different things. We'd spend the rest of the afternoon with Grandma. Then we went home, and Daddy sat back there in the corner and read the Bible out loud, whether we wanted to hear it or not, you know. That was Saturday evening. We always did. There was never much activity.
Mary attended Clearfield Elementary School for 8 years, and they almost always walked the 1.5 miles, which I assume was uphill both ways and through large snowdrifts. She had good grades and was invited to continue schooling. However, none of her friends were going, and so she decided not to either. Her sister Luella got married and had a farm in Morgansville where Mary and her sister Martha would take turns visiting for several weeks through the summer. The work was hard, lots of babies to care for, but she did learn to know Leonard. When she was 16, she went to work at a shirt factory in Shippensburg and worked there until she married. Which brings us to Leonard Baer. Leonard grew up in a large family in Morgansville, Maryland. She remembers Leonard as handsome, kind, and reserved. They had their first date when she was 16 years old and dated off and on for some time as they lived a distance apart. She felt from early on that he would be her husband, and they were married on October 10th, 1940 in Paramount, Maryland, then honeymooned at Niagara Falls.
That's when the turnpike was first opened, the tunnels was first opened. So we went out through some of those tunnels to Ohio to the Graf Zeppelin dirigible place to see where that was made. Leonard wanted to see that. Then we went on to Niagara Falls.
Would that have been a distance that was normal for people to do for their honeymoon?
Everybody went to Niagara Falls.
Oh, really?
You went back 10 years later to see the falls.
They began their life together in a 2-story home in Morgansville where Charlotte and Darrell were born.
We lived in Morgansville 7 years. See, Charlotte and Darrell was both born in Morgansville.
What'd Grandpa do then?
Worked. Him and his brothers had them hammer mills, and then nobody had, or not everybody had binders or thrashing machines and combines and that kind of stuff. They did custom farming. That's what they did then. And have them big old hammer mills run to the farms and ground cow feed.
They moved to a farm on Hurst Road in Marion where Lynette was born, and the 3 kids spent most of their formidable years. Around the time Darrell graduated, Leonard and Mary decided to move to Chambersburg and be closer to Cedar Street and the church work they're involved in. Leonard had been ordained deacon years earlier, and they helped to build and grow the ministry at Cedar Street. Mary spent time volunteering at Menahaven, and when a staff opening became available, she was asked to consider it. Several years later, they asked Leonard to come on board as their maintenance supervisor. They both worked there until they retired, making hundreds of friends along the way.
Leonard wanted to buy the farm from Ralph, and Ralph wouldn't sell it. And Darrell was graduating from high school, and there wasn't enough there to pay to keep asked Darrell to stay there. Darrell said, Leonard said, no, there's no way. I'm not asking Darrell to work here if he can get something better. So we decided to give up farming and move to town and let Darrell find his job. So that brought us to town. I wasn't on the payroll then until the Wises left. Monroe Wise and his wife was the administrator, and she was called the matron. And then they came and wanted to know, David Lehman wanted to know whether I would take Mrs. Wise's place as matron. She worked at the switchboard, and she welcomed the new residents and delivered the mail and was in charge of housekeeping and all that good stuff. So I guess I was dumb enough and did that, which was kind of fun. So I just was up at a retirement dinner party last week for one of the girls that I hired 40 years ago.
Leonard and Mary were able to enjoy some interesting travel times during their working years. Because of their supervisory roles, vacations spent close to home meant that they were too convenient to call and ask for help. So they tried to get out of town and away from immediate access. Some highlights of those travels were Bar Harbor, Maine, the Canadian Rockies, and Pikes Peak. Mary's life was marked by her unselfish service to others in the church, the surrounding community, and at work. She continues to find ways to give of herself to this day. She was blessed with a wonderful husband in Leonard and enjoys the blessing of her 3 children, many grandchildren, and great-grandchildren to this day. Her advice to us: choose a Christian companion. Commit yourself to life in God's leading wherever He chooses you to serve. Be content with the blessings you've received. Life is so full of opportunities to serve other people. Don't miss out in the joy and blessings that they bring. And life will bring sorrow and hardship, but Jesus, the great caregiver, is always there in times of need.